Welcome back. It's been 10 years since Hurricane Katrina, and we're futurecasting. What could happen if a similar storm hit the Gulf Coast in 50 years? Well, one of the big issues, the state of the wetlands, the natural hurricane protection, making up 3 million acres in Louisiana. The problem? Well, those acres are disappearing at a rate of a football field an hour. Former Plaquemines Parish President Billy Nungesser is adamant. Protecting and restoring the wetlands is critical. What's more important, or are they the same? The natural protection or the man-made protection in this area?
We need the levees, we need the flood walls, we need the pump stations. But if we don't lay that storm surge down before it gets to those levees, we'll never build the levees and flood walls high enough to protect New Orleans. And we've got to do the right thing and do the right combination to protect the coast, not what's best for politics or public opinion.
Just take a look. Here's what the Mississippi Delta looked like in 1932, and now 2011. Some 2,000 square miles of land lost.
The wetlands really protect against those destructive waves that hit right along the coast. So once you get rid of those wetlands, you're moving the ocean closer and closer to more populated areas. The waves are going to be breaking closer to where people live, and those waves have a tremendous amount of energy with them.
And if nothing is done, it will only get worse. The USGS says by 2060, about 1 million acres of Louisiana wetlands will be lost.
The really important thing about the wetlands is that if you get a storm that brings the wind from the south, Katrina brought it more from the east than from the northeast. But from the south, that means the Gulf comes slam up against New Orleans because there's nothing really to stop it all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
It is more apt to flood than it has ever been because there's really no buffer left. And these puny little levees and things like that are not going to do any good.
The rapid loss due to a combination of hurricanes, sea level rise, subsidence, and industrial intervention.
Much of that is attributed to the oil and gas exploration that went in and put exploration canals in that allowed saltwater intrusion into the Gulf.
We're talking about 3 feet of sea level rise within the next 50 years in Louisiana. That's one of the fastest rates of sea level rise in the country, with a little over half of that due to subsidence, due to the sinking of the land, and the other half of that due to sea level rise caused by global warming.
The sinking is a big issue here in New Orleans. You know, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, we didn't have the levee system that we have in place now. So the natural flow of the rivers and the natural flooding that happened actually helped to keep things pretty high. We don't have that anymore. So you're draining the water table. We're already seeing right now, just recently, 31 places in Plaquemines Parish alone have been erased from maps here. That's how fast the land's sinking.
The entire 80-mile Mississippi coast battered by Katrina is also victim to wetlands loss.
In Mississippi, we expect to see about, I'd say about 1.5 feet of sea level rise over the next 50 years, so not as fast as along the Louisiana coast, but you know, significant. And the subsidence rates are less in Mississippi, so I'd say that about 2 inches of that 1.5 feet are due to the sinking of the land, and the rest is due to sea level rise.
But when you start losing the wetlands, when you start losing the shoreline retreats and you have more open water, the question is, you know, have you lost your ability to knock the storm down before it comes on shore? And so instead of it going from a Category 5 and coming down to a Category 3, you know, will it stay a Category 5 as it comes all the way to shore?
Following Katrina, the federal government allocated roughly $25 billion helping coastal communities in Mississippi get back on their feet. But according to the Army Corps of Engineers, its work is not designed for large-scale risk reduction from future storms.
People have to understand that if you want to build down near the coast, you're going to lose what you put there. That's all. And if the water rises, I can't tell you exactly what it will do, but it will encroach in where it can encroach.
Because New Orleans is shaped like a bowl and sits below sea level, it naturally collects water and needs a pumping system just to stay dry during a typical thunderstorm. But with sinking lands and rising seas, some of southern Louisiana's dry spots could be under close to 3 feet of water by 2065. So, how does the city combat flooding then?
Here in New Orleans, there's very few places on the planet where you can walk along the streets and you can look up and see the boats passing you. And that's a part of everyday life here in New Orleans. And that's one of the things that we have come to accept as part of our everyday life, but we recognize that there are challenges that come with that, and we're prepared to face those challenges, and we address them every day.
Joe Becker is General Superintendent of the Sewerage and Water Board. He oversees a drainage system that includes 24 pumping stations, operating 119 pumps. They can pump out a little over 500 gallons of water per second. But what happens if that's not enough?
We do not have the capacity to pump out as much as God can make it rain. If we get a 4-hour rain event over the course of a 1-hour period, then we're going to have streets that flood.
A $1 billion upgrade since 2005, coupled with the Corps' revamped flood protection system, gives the Sewerage and Water Board confidence that the city will survive.
Well, if we had any kind of a rain event that combined more rain than a Katrina and then there was more surge that was involved with that, we would have to hold the rainwater inside of our system until the surge event was over, and then we would be able to pump it out. So there would be the possibility that there could be some stored water in our drainage system, maybe even some stored water in streets until the wind event had passed. And once that wind event had passed, the surge would go away, and we'd be able to very rapidly dewater the city from the streets and from the drainage system.
A lot of people misunderstand the significance of the interior pumps in New Orleans. Those pumps are designed to deal with rainfall only. The reality is that at the moment, those pumps are able to handle the first inch of rainfall during the first hour, and then a ½ inch every hour thereafter, up to about 5 hours. If it gets more rain than that, it's going to be overwhelmed.
Just like the levees, maintenance of the drainage system over the next 50 years will not only be vital, but costly.
It is going to be an issue. That's something that we're going to have to be able to address. The funding that we get now to operate our drainage pumping stations comes from a property tax millage that funds the basic drainage that we need to be able to do now. As those stations get built and as we have a better grasp on how much it's going to cost to operate those stations, we're going to have to look to make sure that we have the funding in place to make sure that those stations are operable at the times that we need them the most.
My concern long term is, can we keep up? You know, the world's largest pump station is built in Plaquemines Parish, $5 million a year just to keep it up. And that's numbers today. Those numbers will grow every year. When you look at the floodgates and all the things that were built, a lot of money, a lot of protection, well, that tax burden is going to fall on the people of Louisiana to keep those things operating in good working order for when that next storm does come.
Coming up on Katrina 2065, wait till you see how hurricane forecasting might look in the future.